than hands. If my hands were anything other than hands. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be two shooting stars galloping light across the galaxy. They would be a twin fandango of diamond-studded fingerprints, hot-scotching a radiant neon merengue of light from each folded velvet edge of midnight into every tidy galaxy of 14-karat suns. My shooting star hands would reach and leap and turn the faces of every burning celestial pedestrian, star-grazed and gazing, bright-eyed, amazed, and awestruck as my shooting star hands whip by in a flurry of pirouettes, spitting sparks, and spilling light like each finger is a silver big flip light of flicking flames of hope into the open faces of those twinkling pale and incandescent sisters whose tears glisten and litter the blistering avenue like sequins. I say now, can you see it? How my shooting star hands would wow and bow them right out of their everyday orbits, turn their glowing dashboard Virgin Mary faces into an illuminated orchestra of rubies and gladiolas right before your very eyes. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be a street corner jazz quintet. They would be a 10-fingered symphony of saxophones, trombones, clarinets, and trumpets, wailing, rowdy, loud, and proud. Right out from under my fingernails, the song would swell like Sean Jones. It would swing from the lampposts and reach into people's houses and bring mothers and sons come to dance in the middle of the street with fathers and daughters. And perhaps if my hands were a big bad jazz band, then there would be no vicious, evil, cruel, racist, ugly, horrifying death on the avenue, because I would send my fingers flying in a furious hurricane of eighth notes to just slap right into the faces of any slick-tongued, gun-toting Mama Jamma who would come to steal my brother's breath. For a moment, we could all just leap out into the street and be song and dance and celebration, just the way we're supposed to be. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be 2 magic wands. They would be 10 abracadabra fingers for me to bring back every biscuit-baking grandmother that we ever lost, every sweet and remarkable friend that we didn't realize was either sweet or remarkable until death stole them from right under our breath or while we was looking over our shoulder at the bus stop. Then all of a sudden they was gone, and for a moment, if my hands were magic wands, I would bring them back for a moment. They would fill the room and we could have them, and we could wrap our arms around them, and we could lean our faces into the warmth of their breasts, and we could say all the things that we thought we'd have just a little bit more time to say. And for a moment, things would be so much gooder, so much better than ever before. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be an entire conversation of miracles for me to cure you of any cancer that ever ailed you. They would be a conjure woman's coven of spells and incantations. I would reach right through your breastbone and just ease your heartache. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be a tangible forgiveness. that I could just rub into your skin like lotion and have forgiveness leaping from person to person to person to person, more infectious than HIV and tuberculosis and hate put together. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be mirrors, and I would shine them, and I would hold them right up to your face, so that you could see yourself as immutably remarkable and as holy and as powerful and as sacred as you are all by yourself. If my hands were anything other than hands, I would show you how dope you are all by yourself, and you would never, ever, 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 ever try to hate yourself to death ever again. If my hands were anything other than hands, they would be 2 turntables and a microphone. But mostly, if my hands were anything other than hands, they would be 2 shooting stars galloping light across the galaxy, and we would see ourselves so completely whole inside of one another, which is why I have this slide on the screen behind me that says that I believe in the power of art. I believe in the power of art, and I believe in the power of love, and I do not feel the need to distinguish between these 2 things. I believe in the power of art, I believe in the power of love, which means that I live in belief of the power of you. I believe in the power of how all human beings are 99.9% genetically identical. So turn to the person next to you and say, hello, relative. I believe in the power of the 0.01% of us that makes us just entirely, wholly, uniquely, magically us. I believe in the power of how we are all just carbon, starshine, and dust. Mostly we're all just water and ideas. I believe in the power of us. I believe in the power of art, and I believe in the power of love. If your life as you know it could take a seat in the Jefferson Theater right next to you and could speak, separate from your body, of its own energy and volition, what would your life, by dint of your thoughts, experiences, actions, speech, what would your life say about you? What would your life say that you believe in? That's a real question, homies. I'm really asking you, what would your life say about you? What do you believe in? What would your life say? Who's here, honestly, who here, your life would be like, yo, so I really know Steve well, because I'm Steve's life. Steve believes in the power of his iPhone. He believes in the power of meetings, and he believes in the power of espresso. That's Steve. What would your life say about you? What do you believe in the power of? Anyone can answer. Anyone in this room. You do not have to be named Steve. Who is it? You can just shout it out. I can kind of see hands. Since there's so many of you who want to answer the first question of this, you believe in warm water? Here is a woman who has birthed babies. Isn't it always a scene in a movie where a wise woman says, towels and warm water? And that's when the baby inside is like, the warm water has been called for, I shall arrive. Did you really say warm water? All right, yo. Water is the first medicine for a reason, which is why we shouldn't run pipelines up underneath rivers and stuff, right? Every scientist will tell you everything leaks. We have tried so hard to make leaf-proof shit. We have failed. Everything gonna leak, y'all. Says all the Stanford scientists, y'all. So I believe in the power of art. My friend here, what's your name, friend? You, warm water lady, what's your name? That's such a beautiful name. I feel as though I need an accent to speak to you now, Louisa. Louisa believes in the power of warm water. It is healing, and it is healing. We know that it is healing in many ways. Anyone else want to tell me what you believe in the power of? Biking? I love to mishear people and just shout out whatever I think you said. That's what my father used to do to all my dates. They would come, I'd be like, this is Keisha. He'd be like, Moesha? And I'm like, nah, homie, nah. So what's your name? Say it one more time. Amanda, and what is it that you believe in the power of? Biking. Cycling, thank you. I was correct. I did not mishear you. Cycling. It feels good, doesn't it? Feels good to move forward using the energy and the muscle of the miracle of your physical body. It is a great grace to be able to do that, to be able to put your legs in motion at the pedals. I believe in the power of art. I believe in the power of love. I start with this slide because it is everything that I am going to speak about going forward. I am a visual artist and a performance artist. I make sculptures, sculptural assemblages. There are several of them very close up the road to here in an installation at the Fralin Museum at this time. This is a power figure called Power Figure to Keep Me Alive. I have attempted suicide several times in my life, and the last time that I was going to in my life, I had really reckoned with the fact that it wasn't working out for me to continue to envision myself hustling the labor of my body and my mind and my imagination for somebody else's 40 or 50 hours a week while living in a world that was really unsafe for my body as a fat, queer, black, wanting to be joyful human being. So I couldn't figure out a way to stay alive and to stay whole and to stay well in the world. And so at the time that I was experiencing these deep feelings of despair, I was listening to the box set of Martin Luther King's speeches and Lauryn Hill's Unplugged album. I would listen to Martin Luther King's speeches and I would think, why does this man sound different? This is the same words that every other human being has used before. Why does he sound different? What is happening to me when I listen to him? And in Lauryn Hill's Unplugged album, she so graciously gave artists across the world a gift of completely revealing and being transparent about her creative process and the struggles of her creative process. Because you would see Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and you would just think, this brilliance just happened. But she talked about all the ugly, the beautiful, the difficult, the trying ingredients of that. And she said that she decided to treat her life like she was a scientist and things weren't going well. And so she sort of took the steering wheel of her life and she moved into another direction. And instead of killing myself, I decided to listen to this King speech where he talked about love. And he said, after Emmett Till was beaten, shot 7 times and tied to a cotton gin fan and put in a river for something that the woman who was the other side of the Emmett Till story, when she was on her deathbed several years ago, she of course said, you know, that never happened, right? He was giving a speech, King gave this speech, and he said, there's a power in love that the world hasn't discovered yet. Love is the only truly creative, redemptive, transformative power in the universe. Love is the only way. If war worked, it would have worked already. And so I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about Lauryn Hill, this beautiful, graceful woman, just pour her heart out and say, I needed to go in another direction to survive. So I said, you know what? I want to see if there's power in love. I want to know if there's power in art. I want to know if there's enough power in this to actually keep me alive. And so what I did every day in my little damp moldy Homewood basement. I live in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh called Homewood. Homewood a few years ago was one of the most dangerous places in the United States of America for black people to be killed by other black people, a statistically astronomical amount of street death, which is horrible. So I'm living in this neighborhood, living in a row house. I don't have running water. And every day I would leave my house and I'd walk around my neighborhood. I'd walk around a neighborhood that suffered since all these steel mills closed, that had so much population loss, had just entire city blocks where there would just be one house standing, vacant lots, and houses that would literally fall over in the street. And I would take a trash bag and a poop bag for my dog, and I would walk around and I would sift through the remnants of all these houses, and I would pick things up and I would bring them home, and I would go down to my little basement and I would stack wood. I would just stack wood until it felt right, until I taught myself to feel my very own frequency of rightness, which is what all artists are fighting to do. That's what Rauschenberg fought to do in layering and layering reds till he found the red that was right for him. I trained myself to find that frequency by letting myself unapologetically, without fear, giving myself full agency and permission to do what felt right, which is radical, because I'm a fat black queer woman on this land. I was never supposed to have freedom or resources. Somebody else was supposed to decide what felt good for me. So deciding for myself was profound. And really what felt good was just making things. And I didn't call myself an artist, but I would stack this wood. And I did that for 6 months. I had my own little death date, which is what, mental health professionals say women will do. You'll plan this suicide. And so instead of killing myself at the end of the 6 months, I had these 6 figures. And this figure taught me in the process of making. And we know, those of you in here who are arts professionals, and you follow anything about the science of art, we know that when human beings are imagining or creating, something is happening to our bodies. Something's happening to our heart rate. Something's happening to our nervous system. Our bodies and our brains are functioning through all of these different locations and different purposes active at once in the process of creating. And in that space of creating, I found a way to contend with despair. I found a way to contend with the issues and that I was just facing without static inside of the creative process. And I call this power figure to keep me alive, because what I found inside of that process was my very own ecosystem of love and of loving, which, talking about love in the world today is sort of hard. People are always doubting you. People are so skeptical. People are so hurt. People feel so violated. People feel so like they want to hold so tightly to their own thoughts and their own opinions that when we talk about love, it's bastardized. People are like, I love my iPhone, I love your shoes, I love your lipstick. But when I talk about loving and finding an ecosystem of loving for myself, I found a way. I know that it's love because, one, it kept me alive. I stopped trying to attack myself. But another way that I knew that it was love is that it made more of itself. When I was down in my little moldy, damp Pittsburgh basement, there's a very small 4-inch by 12-inch heat vent that the kids in my neighborhood would pile up at, and they would just watch me for hours. And I would let them watch me because I thought, you know what? This makes sense to me. This is a very different sight for them. And they would watch me, and they wouldn't ask me anything until one little girl said, "Why is everything so black?" Because I was making and I was building these black figures. But ever since the moment at the heat vent in my basement, whenever I would come outside, kids would start to ask me, "Can we make something with you?" And I'll just tell you what happened with that. So this power figure to keep me alive, is in the Progressive Art Collection in Cleveland. People who work at Progressive can see it every single day, which brings me joy because I know that there is an epidemic of despair in this country. There's a reason why the leading cause of death for children ages 10 to 13 is now suicide. There's a reason why more men 45 to 60 are committing suicide at a point in their life when they should be like leaping into what people call the golden years and leaping into things. But people, there is a weight of despair that is happening. So it brings me joy to know that this work of art that I found through the technology of my soul, and when I think about the technology of my soul, I am speaking to, contending with the issues that I'm experiencing presently and in the past, and what is the potential for my life and my community and the potential possibilities in the future. When I think about the technology of my soul, I think about the way that you carry 500 years worth of your people's information in the marrow of your bones, and there's a way that you can be in communication with that. I'm in communication with that, and one of the ways that I'm in communication with that is by trusting my instincts. And so this work, this piece of work that came through the technology of my soul is seen every day by these people. And it's called Power Figure to Keep Me Alive because it kept me alive. And after this point where I found a way to stay alive as a human being, with my own agency, with freedom and resources, I said, it's good work for me to spend the rest of my life doing this. Making things. I wasn't calling myself an artist at the time, but I would make things, and I said I should share this with as many people as possible. And that started to happen instinctively through my neighborhood when the kids were like, Miss Vanessa, are you making stuff today? Can we make something with you? And I would pull out little lumps of clay, and we would all sit on my front stoop, and we would just make stuff and talk. And it was something that attracted a lot of attention from my other neighbors. And I thought, this is a way that I can actually share love itself, that I can be the thing itself, is by sharing that which is most generative and most powerful in my life. It's what I love, and I can make more love by sharing it. And it sounds really like Kleenexy and romantic, right? But in the world that we live in today, to speak out loud that you have decided to share that which you love the most as a way to be alive. As a way to assert living faith, the living love. It is profound, but it does definitely call on that 0.01% of our humanity. It calls upon the place of mystery. So as a citizen artist, I decided that I would inhabit as much of my humanity as possible. My citizenship as an earthling, my citizenship as a queer woman, my citizenship as a neighbor in my neighborhood. I would inhabit my citizenship, the citizenship of my own lungs, with as much art and as much sharing art and as much process of sharing art as I possibly could. I said, I'll be safe for the rest of my life if this is how I live my life. So what we're gonna talk about today in my keynote that probably won't feel like any other keynote you've ever been to, especially since we started with rose petals and I told you somebody gonna get up here with me. So what I want to talk about is what this life looks like. I want to talk about what's important, and I want to talk about what's challenging. So as a citizen artist, one of the questions that I ask myself is why? Why make art? What should I put in the world right now? And what can I ask that artwork to do? And I don't have the privilege to not ask the work that I create, the process of creation and the process of sharing that, to do as much as it possibly can do for me personally, because I'm a whole person. I'm not just in my studio. I'm not just on a stage speaking. I am a whole entire person. And how can I create this ecosystem of loving and creativity that isn't actually work, that is the thing itself? It is the loving, it is the community, it is the hope, it is the medicine. How can I do that? Why? What can I create and put in the world that can do that work? And I'm inspired so much by the question that Angela Davis asked, which is, how can we create communities where everyone is valued? How can we create communities where everyone is valued? So one of the incarnations of my work as a citizen artist is this photo series called The Blacks. I noticed that when the summer of Ferguson, the summer that Mike Brown was killed, followed later on by Eric Garner being suffocated to death by the police, I noticed on social media that a lot of my friends in their 20s, younger, even older, were expressing through social media a depth of sorrow and despair. And one of the things they were saying is that they didn't want to leave the house. They didn't want to leave the house. They said, I just feel so sad. I want to call off work black today. I went to go get coffee this morning. Eric Garner's body has been all over my news feed, and everybody at the coffee shop except me was like laughing and talking, and it felt so wrong. I don't want to go outside. I need time to grieve. I didn't know this man, but it hurts. It hurts so bad. And so I started seeing that all over social media, and I was like, this is, one, they're telling the truth. They're saying what's really happening for them, that this is different for them. This level of despair and sorrow and pain is different for them. And so what I did was I brought people into my studio. And I should say, I was feeling the same things, but I didn't necessarily feel the permission to say it out loud, especially in self-care economy where people sort of use the phrase self-care as a spear of judgment, to say maybe you should have more time for self-care. You're not really doing your self-care work, are you? Self-care, girl, self-care. And you just feel bad. You feel bad for feeling bad and for not being able to make yourself feel better. So I started to call people over to my house, and I would say, I'm going to start a photo series, and I want to photograph you. And could you tell me how you would like to feel in photographs that are crafted just for you? And so people would say, I want to feel like a queen. And I'd say, I got you. I can do queen. I can do queen. I would make their clothes. I would make jewelry for them. I bought $45 wigs that work fine in photographs. And I invited people over to my house. I invited people over. I cleaned the house, which was profound. And I put on some beautiful music, and I would sit them in front of me, and I would wash my hands, and I would proceed to be very tender with them and intentionally loving. And I would say, I created these things for you so that you can look like a queen in this photo shoot. And I would do their makeup, and I would touch their skin very softly. And one of the things that would happen is that, one, people would cry, because what they would express is that nobody was touching them softly anymore. The world wasn't touching them softly, and they would be surprised by the touch. And so I would get all this work together for these photo shoots. I would do their hair, do their makeup, and then I would proceed to parade them around my neighborhood. So the process of taking the photographs became a spectacle. It became a spectacle of beauty. People would stop their cars. They would get out with their iPhones and be like, ooh, what you doing in Homewood? This kind of stuff doesn't happen here. And what started to happen was that people began to reconsider what was possible to come from our neighborhood. Because I live in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh where when people come from out of town to my city, sometimes their friends will tell them, don't visit any neighborhood that starts with H. That way you'll be safe. So my neighborhood is a place that people are warned about. And so it was a surprise for people inside of the neighborhood to see something different happening. And one of the ways that I consider the work and my life, the thing itself as a citizen artist, is the why. Why do this? What should I put in the world? And those moments of tenderness and creativity and spectacle and loving have been transformative. And my definition for love is creative, understanding, redemptive, transformative goodwill. So I would like to share a moment of loving and tenderness with you all, with someone. So I would like to make a poem for anyone who would like to come up. You'll sit in front of me. You get to walk on rose petals. Because we are the earth and we are connected to the earth, and it is right that you should have that tenderness and that beauty. And you'll sit with me, and I'm going to ask you for 3 ingredients: a name, a color, and a purpose. And I'm going to make a poem for you. But what will really be happening is that we collectively, all the people here in the Jefferson, all of these hearts beating, we are making this moment together. And some people might call it social practice art. Some people might call it medicine. Some people might call it freestyling for the fun of it, yo. I call it loving. I call it the thing itself. So I'm going to position the mic, and somebody's going to come up here, and you know who you are. It was you the whole time. You and I both knew it was you the whole time. Hi, I'm Vanessa. Richard. Hi, Richard. Have a seat. How are you?
Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your necklace.
Thank you.
It looks like mine.
Yeah.
You have beautiful eyes. So I'm Vanessa. You're good?
Let
Yes?
me take my glasses.
Okay.
I don't need those here.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a poem for you.
Okay.
And I just need you to give me a name, a color, and a purpose. And the way that you think about the purpose is just by dint of this moment happening, all of these heartbeats in this room, by dint of this moment happening, we can put an equation sign on the other side of it. That means that this moment is moving a force, is causing another happening, right? It's whatever you want it to be. Sometimes I do it with little kids. They'd be like, macaroni and cheese for dinner. And I'm like, that's what it is then. Tonight, I guess it's mac and cheese for dinner. It can defy the laws of gravity. It can come straight from your heart, it can come from your soul. Just make a clear decision for yourself. And then the name, it does not have to be your name, and any color, and then the purpose, and then we'll make this poem together.
Okay. Name?
Yes.
Should it be a person, or it can be a place, or anything?
I think it could be
Doesn't
anything.
matter.
It should feel right to you.
Mendocino.
Okay. Go. Color.
Aquamarine.
Aquamarine. And the power? What's the power? What power do you want?
Power. Enthusiasm.
Okay. All right. In the aquamarine Mendocino sky, there are kites flying over every jubilant face of every second grader, from the coast into the inland valley, where the mothers swoon and the teachers swoop, and lifting up from under the feet is a quaking, a leaping, a brilliant shimmering up of enthusiasm that is surprising people. It comes sometimes in the form of a cell phone jingling in a pocket, a trill running up the legs, a feeling in the heart and the soul of every human being named Richard. All of the sudden, a thrumming, a waking up of the inside of the inside of the inside places, as though an actualized prayer leapt into the cell of every single single human being living and breathing on this planet today. Somewhere there is a seizing, a quaking, a lifting up, a fist rising and shaking to the open aquamarine sky, saying, yes, I have decided to be enthusiastic about tomorrow. Even though it hurts so much today, I lay my head to the pillow sometimes and I cry for children whose eyes I will never ever see. And sometimes it brings me so low past aquamarine and into the cobalt of the blues. But I am not confused about my humanness. I know that this moment and every single heartbeat that is residing alive on this spinning blue orb, this light, this blue, this holy, holy blue space that we call home is quaking and shaking, a seed and a rhythm brand new. And I wonder if the history books will know that it was you, Richard. I am wondering if the historians will look back upon this digital file, if they will swipe an invisible screen in front of their faces and say, Tom Tom Festival. 2019, it was Richard wearing a dove gray sweater, and he spoke in a power. He spoke in a faith that none of the politicians and the scientists could place, but it came from the inside of the inside of the inside. And there was a gorgeous, 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 stunning black woman with him. She was excited and she was delightful and she was not quite like any keynote speaker we'd ever had before. Passing the screen, yes, there she is. We see them together. These two who had not ever been together before, but perhaps they had. And there was a moment, a happening, a making, a quaking of 200 heartbeats in rhythm that set a new seed in motion, and it ruptured through the marble-tiled floor of the White House into the Oval Office. It bloomed, and all of a sudden a tree came there. In that space where so many decisions are made, and no matter how hard they tried to cut and to whack at the branches of this brand new tree that just erupted from a seed within a seed within the seed, from the inside of the inside of the inside, from the moment between the eyes of these two gorgeous individuals. And every leaf on that tree, every single leaf on that tree, it bloomed so large that it became like a fan, like a helicopter blade that spun and wove through the rotunda of that White House and all over cities, all over borderless places of our planet. And each one of those leaves spilled seeds of truth. Seeds of truth. And perhaps people will say, we never imagined the change would come this way. We always thought it would be the scientists. We always thought that it would be the data analysts. We always thought it would come from Silicon Valley. We always thought it would not just look like two people holding hands on a stage in Charlottesville, right up from the road where a terrible thing happened, right up from the road where other terrible things happened, and we never thought, but it did. It came, and we are so grateful, the earth will say. And all of those seeds that land on our shoulders and into our hair, we'll wipe them off as we wipe our tears away. And someday, somewhere, there'll be Richard and Vanessa Day. And all the small children will wear dove gray sweaters. And all the little girls will want to be fat and black and gorgeous with little mohawk afros. And we'll say, you can be whatever you want to be. That was the point. You could live in truth and love in truth safely and wholly, all because of this day, this moment, this Tom Tom Festival? Yes. Yes is the answer. Yes is the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
So then what is the work? The work is to make places for wholeness, for truth, for us to reveal ourselves and to be revealed. I'm going to go through the rest of these images and tell you some stories. Then I'm going to give you time to ask some questions if you would like. So this spectacle of loving, the spectacle of beauty, affirming the power of our togetherness. We can call it work, we can call it social practice, but really it's what human beings have always done. It's who we, in our most original ways and places, were. So as a citizen artist, I want to work within the original places, and I want for institutions, I want for cities, I want for organizations to enable that togetherness, to enable the human happenings in human spaces. With this little obstacle, with this little bullshit, with this little resistance to those happenings as possible, I want mayors to become deep enablers of human places. I want museums to enable human happenings because we need it. We need it critically. When I move around the neighborhood, this happens. Kids follow us and they're like, oh my God, who is that pretty lady? Who is she? I'm like, that's Ada, she my assistant. What does Ada do? I'm like, she's a student at Yale. What's Yale? Yale's a university. She goes to a university called Yale and she hanging out in Homewood. What's wrong with her? Nothing's wrong with her. She loves this place. This place is inspiring to her. And the kids say, well, Ada goes to Yale. Can I go to Yale? And I'm like, that's a choice. You have that choice. You can do that. And so what happens for me as a citizen artist living wholly and completely the thing itself, the life itself, through my practice and through my neighborhood, I don't go to people's offices for meetings. If you want to have a meeting with me, you have to come to my house. You have to sit on the porch. And I know the meeting is not really going to be effective like you want it to be because kids are going to interrupt us. And they'll be like, who's that? And I'm like, that's Lester Holt from NBC Nightly News. What does he do? He's a reporter. And then they grab his microphone. So, Lester Holt, you in Homewood now, homie. What's next for you? And what happens is there's an opening up of possibility by proximity, through the loving, through the courage that it takes just to share. So moving through the neighborhood, sometimes I would take a work of art with me out of my house and I would just get on the city bus with it because I find that museums are wonderful places to have artist talks, but so are buses. And so I would sit a sculpture next to me on the bus and people would get on the bus, they'd be like, older black people, is that voodoo? And kids would be like, I can touch it? Because they don't normally let me touch the art at the other, I'm gonna touch it. You made this? Where, in Homewood, really? I saw that in the newspaper, that's amazing. Have the best artist talks just on the street corner, just on the city bus. Artist talks on city bus, sit next to a painting and see what happens. And a lot of my life as a citizen artist is, I want to see what happens if I do this. And a lot of times I do things and I don't ask anybody for permission. I just say like, oh, really? I'm going to take this grant money. They know about this, y'all, don't worry. I'm gonna take this grant money and make a whole bunch of signs, and I'm gonna tell them that the sign is the artwork and the neighborhood is the exhibition space. So all of this, for me, was really born out of a place of finding love in process and finding that clarity of process, touching in with the technology of my own humanity. As human beings throughout time have found ritual in making, have made mandalas, have worked together beading. The social connection, the magic of making was activated for me, and I just decided to share it. So one of the ways that I shared is in making Black Madonna pinups and appropriating material from popular culture. This is Serena Williams on the cover of Vogue magazine the year that she was going in for the Grand Slam, greatest of all time, on covers of Vogue, on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But the comment section were like, she's so ugly. She's not even a woman. We should test her testosterone. She looks like a gorilla. She's a monkey, which to me was so heartbreaking because she was the greatest of all time, which meant that she was automatically beautiful. Because she was one of the only people to do what she had done. And she was as beautiful as I am. And so one of the ways, the why, as a citizen artist of what I could put in the world was these images of Serena Williams on the cover of Vogue magazine, completely transformed into the mother of all creativity. When I travel around and I'm asking the why, what do I want this work to do? What do I want to be possible in this space? One of the things I ask people is, if you could make a work of art that had the power to do anything, what would you want it to do? And this little kid in Connecticut said he would want his work of art to have the power to make brownies that would cure cancer. But what happens when I invite other people into the why? Why make this, and what do you want it to do? And to think about art, and to think about the practice with deep purpose and with soul. So where part of it is, yes, you can engineer and you can conceive all these ideas, but where's the soul? Thank you. The heart and the soul of the work. And one of the ways that I get people to leave their fear behind and to step into asking, and to step into answering that question is by asking them to identify a time in their life when they thought there was something that they couldn't make it through. Because this always reminds people that they have courage. And one of the things that my mother taught me about being an artist is that I would need to be creative and brave at the same time. And so I remind people that you are courageous. There was a time when you thought you wouldn't make it. And this woman, she wrote, when I was kidnapped and thought I was going to be dead. And one of the things that helps people to have their own authentic answers for why make this work of art and what do you want this work of art to do is to remind them that they have had courage and triumph, and that is inside of their bodies. It is in the muscle of their beings. Another purposeful work of art, Black Madonna, the Fuck You, which is think about all the microaggressions that come upon the body. Think about all the times that there was that one dude at your office who just touched your lower back so many times a day, and he was your boss. And you couldn't say anything to him. You didn't feel comfortable. And so what would happen is at the museum, there was lots of little slips of paper in front of this artwork, and people would write down these sort of congested aggressions and these congested violences that had built up in them to relieve and to make more space. And I was really surprised how much use people got out of this work of art. But again, as a citizen artist, I'm thinking about the deep service of art and the deep service of proximity to art-making spaces where nobody's wanding you down. The police are not gonna follow you through a space where you can, but just by dint of your humanity in your own neighborhood, you can walk into a place and you can make something and you can see art and you can be connected with that technology of your own humanity, the technology of your soul, the technology of that 0.01% of your humanness that is just you and will only ever be you. So, quickly, images, and if anyone would like to ask any questions, you can. I went from just 1 minute with pictures, and then you can ask some questions. I don't make singular, discrete objects anymore. I make entire communities of objects. I believe the Thich Nhat Hanh quote that says the next great revolutionary leader will not be a single individual, but will be an entire community of people. I believe in the power of people, and I believe in the power of what happens when we come together with courage and love and tenderness and actual belief in each other, not just our opinions and ideas, but in one another. So this is the work that is at the Fralin. You can see this now. This work is performable. Every work of sculpture I do can also be performed. This is called the Goodbye Song, a work of art that was created to honor the lives of all of these black women and girls and black trans women whose murders were never seen as urgent, were never seen as critical enough to take on a level of attention that meant that they would actually be solved. But you can imagine being an artist in this world and being black and contending with the repeated images of black death and black suffering and the continued shrug of the world around you to that death. Like, I live in Pittsburgh, where Antoine Rose was shot and killed after showing his empty hands to a police officer and running. And the officer who killed him was found not guilty. And that happens all the time. So there's no time when in my work as an artist that I can't ask the work to be for me also. I don't have the privilege to not ask it to go to work on behalf of my own body and behalf of my own soul. So this is called the Goodbye Song. This is a performance of the work that's at the Fralin. This is me walking the lawn at UVA in reclamation of the space, because Thomas Jefferson worked very hard to keep enslaved people invisible. And at the UVA, there was a time when students could not bring their slaves with them to school, but you could rent them from the school in a place where they were worked to be invisible. And so this was a ritual of spectacular visibility. And this was the day that Michael Rossfeld was acquitted. This is Nia Wilson. What kind of work can I put in the world that will allow people to transform the grief and the trauma that they experience? Because there's so much violence in the world that we live in and so much trauma that it gets constipated inside of you. And so this is Nia Wilson, who was killed by a white supremacist in Oakland. And this is a work of art that I did called Love Poem for Nia Wilson. The last thing that I will show you is this is a work that is traveling around the country. It's called Miracles and Glory Abound, which is my MAGA. All of the things that you have seen that I've talked about, the interactions that we've had together, all of this is loving. We are the thing itself. And I want more spaces for the thing itself to exist with a little obstacle. This is the front porch in Homewood. When I would make the sculptures on the front porch, people would say, adults would be like, is that voodoo? You don't go to church, do you? And kids would be like, I want to do that too. Can I do that with you? And I would say no, because everybody's grandmother was like, that black lady over there, that woman she's living with, that's not her sister. And it's not her cousin. And she does not go to church. And so I would tell the kids, nope, you can't come, because we're going to be on the news tonight. It's not safe. But kids would jump my fence. They would jump my fence like that little girl right there. She was like, oops, Miss Vanessa. I landed in your front yard right by this paintbrush. And so I would pull out all the old art supplies, and I would buy stuff for the kids to paint on. They would paint on the old building materials from the house. I had to start to feed them because they would look at me eating. They'd be like, oh, ow, I'm parched. So I started to feed the kids. People would drive by, and they'd be like, is this a daycare? And I'd be like, what? I look like having a daycare. I don't have kids. These are not my kids. And they'd be like, well, who are they, and why are you taking care of them? And I'm like, that's a funny question. And I'm like, they're artists, they're my neighbors, and we take care of each other. One of the challenges in building the ARThouse was that everybody would be like, so they let you do this? They gave you money to turn your front porch into an art space? They gave you this? I was like, yo, there is no they. It's just us. We're just doing the best that we can. There was this constant expectation that I was going to say, some great nonprofit organization gave me $600,000 to have community engagement time. And I said, I'm just sharing what I love. I said, they were like, and why are you doing that? Like, what benefit is it to you? And I was like, because it keeps me alive. It is a part of my wholeness, which people were like, oh, you one of them new age black folks. Oh, you do yoga? You a yoga black girl, aren't you? And I was like, if I was, wouldn't have all these wonderful curves going on. Well, I could. But there was this idea that somebody had to give you permission to yourself. Someone had to give you permission and access to your ideas and to your life. That's something that I contend with all the time, is the mystery of they, the presence of they, the ulterior motives of the they. And I have to say, no, it's just us. I don't have a nonprofit. You people leave art supplies on my front porch. Whenever the front door of the ARThouse is open, anyone can come in and make something. If there's a bar and a church every other block, there should be an ARThouse every other block too, because we know how powerful art, how powerful social connection, how powerful creativity is for the human body, especially in these times of such great stress and trauma, to have a place that you just walk into and be and make. So I definitely did get a little bit of grant money and spend it on signs. Stop shooting, we love you. Love, you are so beautiful. I would meet kids, the kids would be at the ARThouse, and they would, one girl came and she was crying one day, and I said, what's wrong? Like, what's happening? Did you have a hard day? She said, the kids at school, they say that I'm ugly and that I smell like an African. And I was like, oh. I said, what do you know about Africa? I said, gave her a globe. I said, show me where Africa is. And she pointed to Greenland. And I said, that's not Africa. And I show her a picture of Beyonce wearing platinum and diamonds around his neck. I said, that comes from Africa. Everything that shines comes from Africa. Why would Africa smell bad if all of that platinum and all those diamonds came from there? Magic is there. That's where your people are from. And there's this disconnection, but this way that I have to constantly tell young children that they are worthy and that they are beautiful, all by themselves. And that I meet kids younger and younger who compare themselves with everything and everyone around them. It's something that is a constant contention. The house that you see here, I had borrowed from a low-income housing company. They said I could use it for 2 months. I used it for 2.5 years. I bought this house at the end of the street. I bought these 2 houses. My neighbors were like, please don't paint that house that neon blue color. And so that's the color of the house. And the whole front of the house is mosaiced in glass. There's a bus stop at the front of the house. I took out the lawn and put a bench there because there are really not a lot of bus stops in the neighborhood because they're afraid that things will happen at the bus stops. So we have a bench that people sit at. They would work on the mosaic. Anybody who came by would work on the mosaic. It was really a very diplomatic process. Everybody could do it. It was democratic. Just did it. And so people to this day will come to the house and they'll be like, I made that E. This is what the house looks like now. This is the front of the house. It says, we are all here together. Because one of the things that is a great sorrow for me that is killed by white supremacy is our togetherness as earthlings, that we could live inside of the truth that we are really just all here together. I want to thank you all for your time and for your generosity of spirit as I share these images and these stories about what it is to be a citizen artist in a place where people are sad a lot, in a place where a lot of the women and a lot of the children can walk by places where their family members have been shot and killed. Places I saw the police handcuff 2 8-year-olds to a telephone pole. Places where you don't actually feel safe calling the police because they turn on you. That really does happen. And what it means to have a space with an open door in a place that is suffering from the ricochet and the trauma of racism, white supremacy, and the lies of capitalism. Beauty is important. It is a great disrupting, great motivating force. At the end of every art house, we have little dance parties. And this is important physically because of how important it is to move as a way to process trauma, but also because it's joyful and it's fine to have places that are centered around joy. It is fine to affirm and uplift. It is glorious to make spaces just for joy. And it's important because this is the old art house, and that's a dead body in the street. I did blur it out because it's horrible. And I'm always thinking about the power of art to heal, the power of the process of creating, the healing power of that, and how important spaces that center joy and that affirm beauty, individual beauty and spaces of beauty are, when every day, every individual in the neighborhood who had to look for hours and hours, like what Mike Brown's friends said about in Ferguson, like, why aren't you covering him up? Why are you just leaving him? Like, the crime scene is so traumatic, and everybody has to contend with it in a certain ways. And there are ways that through the technology of our soul and the power of making and social connection and making together is healing to the trauma that comes from moments like this. Everybody comes into the art house, not just kids. There's a big garden in the back. There's a holy sign in the front, a stage in the backyard. These are kids from the neighborhood just hanging out on the stage one night. This is the day when I was at Standing Rock, when the state of North Dakota brought down the state of emergency that allowed them to bring the National Guard and all the security forces to camp. They said there was so much violence and so much sexual assault and so much drugs and weapons at camp. That's what camp looked like. This is my friend Moreno, who got bit by a dog. That Amy Goodman video where Amy Goodman's yelling about the dog biting a pregnant woman, the man who pulls the dog off the pregnant woman is my friend Moreno. And I'm saying this because one of the things as a citizen artist that I do is I have to ask myself when and where I will, what will I do with my body? Where will I place my body and my voice so that by dint of being there, I can become a part of an energy and a part of a movement that is transformative. But it costs. It costs your physical body. I was on the bridge at Standing Rock when there was just a line of 50 men pointing M16s and a tanker at our heads. And you're on your knees praying. What will you do with your body? What do you do with your work, and why as a citizen artist? This is one of the other ways that it costs. People find out where I live. They find out my email addresses. They send me horrible, heinously stupid, racist letters. And this is a way that people try to silence me and try to silence other activists that I know. And for me, what letters like this do is it makes me feel profoundly sorry for the death of human spirit that white supremacy causes. And that there are so many human beings that cannot actually live in the glory of their own humanity because they consider it their work to hold chains against other people. This is my friend Moreno. He's a feather carrier for the Anishinaabe. He's the guy in the other photo who was bit in the stomach, and this is the art house on a day. The kids call me the rainbow hunter because I can always find rainbows in the sky. And this is a day when all the kids are outside jumping up and down like crazy people because I found 2 rainbows. And I just wanted to share it with you because all of those little things matter. Every time that you get to share your joy with somebody else, it makes more joy. So please, as you go through the rest of your day and your time here, share your love and share your joy and share your adult silliness with each other because we need it for its medicinal qualities and for its infectiousness also. So in closing, this is me on the porch with my dog. And this is my heartfelt thank you that I was able to be here and share some of these stories and to share this moment with Richard, with you all. And I will say that this has not been easy for me. I am very sad. I'm sad. I feel really unsafe in the city that I live in. I feel like I cannot call the police without being scared about what they'll actually do to me. I worry about the kids all around me. I worry about the men around me. I worry about my brother. I worry about the adults with autism who are being shot and killed by the police. I am experiencing a level of racial anxiety that is actually new for me. So this hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy to be back in Charlottesville for me. But I'm telling you all of this transparently because everyone is carrying something more with them than you can see. And so those spaces of joy and spaces of creativity and spaces of human affirmation are more powerful than we have language for. So I invite you to that space in your own soul where you're able to share that with yourself and with each other. And I went over time by 8 minutes now, but I would like to give anyone who wants to ask a question the opportunity to ask a question. And if there are no questions, I'll just say thank you and enjoy the sunshine. So any questions? Okay, thanks, y'all. Have a good day.